Hello, and welcome to BIA's Leading Local Insights podcast, your go-to spot for staying ahead in the dynamic local advertising marketplace. You'll hear BIA's top experts and their distinguished guests break down the trends, technologies, and innovations reshaping local media. Plus, you'll frequently get highlights from BIA's U.S. local advertising forecast. Thanks for tuning in. Let's dive in.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to BIA Advisory Services Leading Local Insights podcast. My name is Rick Ducey. I'm the Managing Director here at BIA. Today, we're going to be diving into the world of radio and talking to one of the leading companies that continues to innovate in this space. And we'll find out more about that innovation in just a second. We're thrilled to have Jimshade Chaudhari here, who is CEO of Marketron, to talk with us about what Marketron is doing and providing traffic as a service, a really important concept. And as we'll find out, I think sometimes kind of taken for granted or overlooked in some cases at a station's and their clients' risk, frankly. So we'll see how to deal with that. But traffic as a service for media clients is meant to manage revenue, scale revenue, create some efficiencies by automating workflows within a cloud-based platform to manage sales, inventory, and billing data, which is kind of the engine room of the radio station business. So we want to make sure that's working smoothly and well. So we'll learn more about that in just a moment. But first, Jimshade, let me just give you a chance to say hello and say a bit about yourself and about Marketron.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Thanks for having me, first of all. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast. And as Rick said, I'm CEO of Marketron. You know, Marketron's been around for over 55 years servicing the radio industry. And, we continue to focus on products and services that just help radio broadcasters be more successful, especially as the space is evolving, right? And lots of challenges for radio broadcasters. And as we talk to customers kind of on a daily, weekly basis, we're just figuring out ways to continue to produce products and services that help radio groups be more successful.
So definitely want to get into the products and services and the theme of innovations that you've focused the company on for providing your clients and their clients. But I wanted to think about something. There's a lot of change in the industry now. I guess we say that every year, but for sure it's true this year. With workforce realignment, reductions, creating new positions around AI and so on. Headcounts are down. The staff makeup is different skill sets and so on. And I mentioned, kind of liking trafficking as the engine room. It's not necessarily the most exciting part of the cruise liner, but you don't go anywhere without it. And as people in management are looking at workforce realignment, rationalization, whatever, is that a place, the trafficking kind of center, that workflow where it's not top of mind? So you make some personnel staffing adjustments, then all of a sudden, whoa, we broke something here.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because it's definitely not the sexy part of an organization for a radio group. But the way when we talk to people, we say it's critical, right? It's a critical function, like you said. A radio broadcaster can't function without a traffic team. You can have the best sales team, but if you can't deliver on the advertising that they're selling, make sure it runs properly, make sure it gets billed properly, then you're not going to be successful. And right. Traffic is one of those things where it's kind of humming on the background and it's working until it isn't. And
right.
and usually when people focus on traffic is when they have a problem. And it's usually when a traffic manager decides that they're either going to retire or leave for one reason or another.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I'm not sure that many companies, they probably, in theory, we should do this and we'll do it tomorrow, but some sort of succession planning or cross training so you don't get left with just that one person that knows everything. And when that institutional memory goes out the front door, so does your traffic system.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Sometimes when we think about traffic and when we're discussing it with folks, we're saying traffic it's a critical function, but it's not a strategic function.
Yeah.
And what we mean by that is, like I said, you can't run a radio station without a traffic function, but it doesn't differentiate your station from another station. Advertisers, if they're picking between station A and B, they're going to assume whatever advertising they get sold is going to run properly, on time, and it's going to be billed. And so they're not making their decision based on who has the best traffic department. They're making their decision based on the content, the audience that can be reached, the sales strategy of the broadcaster, etc. But from a traffic perspective, because it's not strategic and most people aren't thinking about it, they're not investing in traffic to really optimize it and make it as efficient as it can be. And since it's not strategic, it's underinvested in. And what that means is there's a better way to do traffic for most radio broadcasters. They just haven't thought about it because it hasn't been a problem right now.
And that, I mean, kind of problem-driven solutions versus, forward-thinking solutions is a challenge and an issue, I think, for a lot of companies. And I'll do a sports analogy here, which will make my friends and colleagues howl since I'm not a sports person. But the idea that it's critical but not strategic, to use a sports metaphor, torturing it though I will be doing, you need to work the foundations. I mean, so you get out there, and the coach has you just, run sprints and do basic maneuvers, and that's what you build on. And that's sort of trafficking's role. I mean, it is competitive to the extent that your customers expect things to work, and then you can shine where you have clear, moats or differentiators in the market. But if you don't deliver, that's doesn't work. And so clients have a certain level of expectation for what's going to happen, and they may not think about it either. And then when it doesn't happen, that's bad news for everybody.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those, it's a table stakes function, right? Everyone just assumes it works. And it's fine when it's working. The problem is, since it's not considered a kind of a strategic function within a broadcaster, they're not investing in optimizing it or creating systems. And so that means a lot of the knowledge is sitting in those traffic managers' heads. And so when one of those traffic managers leaves, it's not just the fact that you got to backfill that person, you got to go recruit someone, you got to hire them, you got to train them, but that institutional knowledge that's sitting in that traffic manager's head because it hasn't been systematized is gone.
So some of that is on the station. They need to be aware of this and have plans to mitigate it, or cross training, something like that. But some of that you help provide some solution there. I mean, it's a system, so people don't need to do everything themselves.
Yeah, honestly, in conversations that we've been having with our customers, there's a lot on their minds and there's a lot on their plates. And as you mentioned, I think at the beginning, people are operating with leaner teams, so they can't do everything. And so, we are the people who have created the traffic system. We built the software. We've actually had people outsourcing traffic to us for over a decade. And it started out in emergency situations, right? A traffic manager had some medical leave and they were going to be gone for a couple months, and people used to come to us and say, can you help out? And we would help out where possible. What we've seen over, I'd say, last 6 to 12 months is those frequencies of the frequency of people asking for that kind of help has just increased. So maybe we used to get one of those once every 3 to 4 months. We're seeing it monthly now, right? Especially at some of the bigger groups where it's almost like whack-a-mole. They have a traffic manager in one market or for one station, and then they go replace that one, and then all of a sudden it happens again. And I think it's another market, and I think it's this trend as we've been once again talking to the customers. A lot of traffic managers have been in their roles for a really long time, so they have a lot of that institutional knowledge, but they're getting closer to retirement or just moving out of the workforce. And there really isn't a strong bench of traffic managers sitting anywhere within an organization, within a broadcaster, to kind of pick up that slack. And so it's,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying that's just a trend that we've noticed, is that we're getting more and more of these requests where it's like, hey, this traffic manager is left, or this traffic manager is really close to, retirement, is probably going to move on. And if you treat those kind of as one-offs, we're talking about like traffic is critical, so you have to have that function. But I think the decision on what you do with traffic is actually a strategic decision, whether you keep doing what you're doing in-house or you decide to move to a different model.
Yeah, I definitely buy that. And it's as we think about staff positions and support models like we're doing now. I mean, if I'm running a radio station and I get the word from corporate, I have X number of less positions. One way to do that is just put X next to positions and they're gone. Another way is we need to rethink how we're staffing these positions and who's in those positions. We can't just have the same roles and job descriptions we've had for the past X number of years. We need somebody who has this skill set, this knowledge set, the ability to learn, these several new things, and it's a new job. And one of the new jobs is to work with something like your traffic as a system, and it's probably a different role than stations used to have. And these staff members with all the institutional knowledge, that's great, but one of the things from a platform perspective is you can move some of that on, there's AI and everything else, but a lot of that knowledge properly belongs probably in a IT platform, and people learn to operate it. But that should be something where it's more transferable than if somebody all of a sudden. Well, I used to work with somebody who would say, somebody leaves, they got hit by a bus, and she would say, well, let's be a little bit more pleasant. Let's say somebody wins the lottery. How are we going to replace them? So I mean, so stations that come to you in an emergency sounds like a growth area. So I guess two thoughts there. One, is that something that you're welcoming, or it's like, well, we're really a software company, but we'll become a service company to help our clients out. But if it's a growth company, how are you planning to approach that going forward? Is that going to be like a leading offer in addition to the platform offer?
Yeah, so some good questions there, right? I think from our standpoint, we're always just looking at ways when we talk to our customers on how we can help them. And we've provided traffic systems for multiple decades at this point.
Right.
We've built a digital system that integrates in with our traffic system. We built a modern way to deal with payments and electronic payments, and we just look at traffic as a service, or TaaS as we like to call it, really as a modern way for traffic operations.
Right.
And I think it's not just the actual function itself, it's the mind share that it takes at a radio group, right? This is something they shouldn't think about. The same way an advertiser, when they're buying advertising at a station, just assumes that their advertising is going to run, they're going to get billed properly.
Of course.
Stations should we are the experts in the space. We can help them out. And, we have moved it away from an emergency service because the problem has become for us, it's a combination of technology and people that provide this service, right? We have expert traffic managers, so they're more efficient than probably most traffic managers at stations. And then we're giving them technology tools to become even more efficient. And so we don't offer a service anymore that's an emergency service at this point. So we're having these conversations with our customers to say, look, this is a strategic decision. Here are all the reasons you should make this move. And for some groups, they want to test the waters, dip their toe in, give us 1 or 2 stations. Others have given us all their stations. But that's a big decision for groups, right? So they don't make that within a week or 2 weeks. They really need to plan that out. And we've seen really strong demand, right? I think a lot of folks are trying to figure out how to become much more efficient with the teams that they have, the teams that they're forced to work with. And so those folks are coming to us, and we've seen really, really strong demand for this service. We have a list out until I think the end of August at this point of customers that want to come on board.
That's all good news. So you're deeply embedded in the radio industry, all different kinds of operators, sizes, groups, standalones. And it can't be one size fits all. How is this evolving across the industry and the different variabilities for the situations of radio stations and groups?
Yeah, so I mentioned we've had this service around for about 10 years as an emergency service. And the reason it's really come to the forefront is, I think, just a bunch of trends that are converging. One, we talked about, the traffic managers kind of getting to a retirement age or moving on from their roles. The second is we've seen some of the largest customers outsource, right? iHeart's outsourced all their traffic. Cumulus has outsourced all their traffic. But those big groups, they have the scale to go and do that on their own. The
Right.
majority of customers don't. And that's where kind of our service comes in, right? We help make that a possibility for them because most of our customers couldn't go and outsource it. They don't have the number of stations to do it.
Mhm.
And they don't have the relationships and the know-how on the technology side, right? When I look at Marketron and our role for the radio industry, we really want to be a technology partner for the radio industry,
Right.
right?
Right.
We've been, like I mentioned, we have digital products, modern payment product. Now we got a modern way to provide traffic, and then we have the actual traffic systems that we offer. And so this solution works for somebody who owns 1 to 2 stations, and it works for somebody who owns over 100 stations, right? The complexity of those stations vary, and there isn't a single price, right? We look at each of those stations on an individual basis and look at how much work it's going to take. And so we have dynamic pricing around the service that we offer it, but it can work for almost anybody in our customer base that's on our visual traffic or Marketron traffic systems.
So the focus now, of course, is cross-platform audio. In the case of radio, so much is exciting on the buy side, happily for things like streaming, podcasting, and linear, broadcast audio. There's always some recent study showing how viable and important broadcast radio is as sort of the foundation for an audio first campaign. But even radio stations are into streaming video, CTV, and other forms of streaming video. I talked to one small medium market operator about a year or so ago and just saying, hey, how's the market? Which in those days we thought it was crazy. These days we think it's even crazier. I'm sure in 6 months we'll think it's even crazier yet. But he said, actually CTV is our biggest growth category, and not just in percent. It's becoming the biggest growth category in dollars. I was like, wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So that's a new product set. It's a new, sell. It's new people, new expertise, and obviously you got to book that inventory, traffic it, invoice it, and you don't want to send a customer 15 different invoices for one campaign.
Yeah.
Is that where you see the industry headed, and is that how your traffic systems are evolving to support that kind of execution, the workflow efficiency?
Yeah, I mean, I think the radio industry has made a bet on digital, right, to offset the decline on kind of the traditional radio advertising. And we built a product almost 5 years ago now called Next Digital, which allows broadcasters, sales reps, to basically create a proposal that's omni-channel, right? Includes the digital, includes the traditional radio, and it actually takes that proposal, converts it into an order, pushes the radio part into our traffic system for execution, pushes the digital part into various DSPs for execution, brings all that stuff together, single bill or single invoice you can send to your customer, and then they can pay electronically, right? So, our kind of mantra is really just support the radio industry, right, in this evolution that they're going through. And so digital is the bet, right?
Right.
That the industry has made. And so we're trying to make it easier and easier for people to execute on it, because the conversation I've been having about digital with our customers hasn't been about should we do digital anymore, or is digital going to grow? Yeah, or is digital going to grow? I think we're seeing, everyone leaning into digital. They're seeing revenue growth. The conversation has really switched into margin and profitability. How do you do digital at scale in a way that's efficient? And that's kind of for like traffic as a service for us. Once again, it's that efficiency theme that we hear over and over again, right? Is doing these things are important. You have to do it to be competitive, to stay relevant. But how do you do it at scale? How do you do it systematically? And that's where we've really put a lot of effort into creating systems, and specifically for radio, right? We are the only digital platform that connects into our traffic system, right? So that when you have a proposal that's omni-channel across traditional radio and digital, we can push that down into the traffic system. We can push all the billing lines down into traffic system, so you're not having to duplicate data entry from one system into another, which causes errors and obviously takes time. But we've created an end-to-end system for radio groups that want to sell digital.
Well, you've been doing this a long time, and I don't often hear broadcast, radio, or TV, spoken of as like the leading innovation industry in the business. But you've done a lot of innovation for industries that's probably reluctant to innovate, frankly, in many ways. So that's great. And, you've got a lot together, and definitely at the leading edge of where the business needs to be, and providing those inputs and insights and platforms so that they can start to focus on margin growth and, revenue growth and going into all the digital products. That's where they really need to be. So that's good to hear. We've covered a lot, Jimshade. Is there anything else that we should touch base on before we close up for today?
I think it's where we kind of started from, right? Radio is going through a major evolution. There's a lot on kind of the executives' minds and the leaders on where they should focus their efforts.
Yep.
And I think, we've been a partner to the industry. We're going to continue to be a partner to the industry. We don't focus on any other verticals other than radio, right? And so we really dive in deep with our customers to try to understand their pain points. And I think, TaaS is just, the latest thing that we focused effort on, and it's really from customer demand, right? We see the trends that are emerging behind the scenes, and we try to educate people on, hey, we're seeing this with other groups. Have you thought about something like this, right? Have you thought about what would happen if this happens to you, and how do you get in front of it? And so I think for us as Marketron, we believe in radio, we believe in kind of the evolution, and we want to be a partner that helps people get to that next level, whether it's, becoming, being able to more easily sell omni-channel campaigns, whether it's being more efficient with their traffic, whether it's collecting their payments faster through electronic payments. And so, you'll see Marketron continue to focus on radio kind of moving forward. And, if anyone out there is listening and knows of a problem that's happening from a radio perspective that you're not seeing a solution for, feel free to reach out to us at Marketron. Feel free to reach out to me at Marketron. We're always open to ideas. And like I said, really trying to make sure that the solutions that we produce are not just great technology solutions, but they're actually helping solve real problems for our customers.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that people who listen to this will come back and have a different perspective on what traffic means. It's like, I need to change my lens on what traffic is. It really is an important area that we shouldn't take for granted. Make sure it's staffed well, make sure we're using, platforms that are efficient for workflow and keep us in the game. It's probably the best news is you don't want to hear about traffic because you just assume it's going to work, and you want to be in that position. And how do you make sure you stay in that position? Because you want to be out competing on areas where you can really show some differentiation. It's like, well, you should hire us because our stuff works. It's like, that's pretty exciting. Thank you. What else do you do? And you help them lead that strategic dialogue to really stay in the game and look at some growth, which is great. And integrating the linear business with the traditional business and kind of one campaign, cross-platform, one invoice, and it just works. Is a really great place to be. Well, thank you so much for being with us today and all of the insights and data and advice you shared. I hope people take that to heart. There's a lot of good information and perspective there. And boy, it's coming into the second half of 2026. So good luck with the second half of the year. Appreciate your being here as always. And it's always fun to talk with you. I really enjoy it. And for everybody else, thank you for being with us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions or ideas for things you'd like us to cover, people you'd like us to speak with, to bring to you, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach us at podcast@bia.com. And we look forward to bringing you more insightful conversations like this one on local media throughout the year ahead. Jimshade, thanks again.
Thanks, Rick. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to the BIA Leading Local Insights podcast. Stay a part of our community by subscribing so you never miss an episode. And we want to hear from you. What topics do you want us to dive into next? Email your ideas to podcast@bia.com.